beautiful peeps. Not sure how long I'm going to be on today. I do have a sore throat, so, we'll see. But I wanted to come on today because I haven't been on in a while. And I wanted to talk about rock music backmasking. Um, okay, so I got a Wikipedia article, and as most of you know, I don't like using Wikipedia, but this is the best source that I could find. So we're just going to have to use that. Wikipedia has gotten better over the years because it has gotten, you know, um, uh, sources, but it's still not quite there. Um, but, you know, if it's the best you got, it's the best you got. So, anyway, let's see what Wikipedia has to say about rock music backmasking. Okay, so backmasking is a recording technique in which a message is recorded backward onto a track that is meant to be played forward. It is a deliberate process, whereas a message found through phonetic reversal may be unintentional. Artists have since used backmasking for artistic, comedic, and satiric effect on both analog and digital recordings. In 1969, rumors of backmasked messages in the Beatles song Revolution 9 fueled the Paul is Dead urban legend. No idea what that is. Since at least the early 80s, excuse me, Christian groups in the US alleged that backmasking was being used to promote satanic purposes, leading to record burning protests and proposed anti backmasking legislation by state and federal governments during the 80s as part of the Satanic Panic. Many popular musicians were accused of backmasking messages in their music. Apparent backmasked messages may, in fact, have been pareidolia, um, which is what I figure. I mean, yeah, backmasking does happen, but I mean, come on. Um, and really, I was a fundy in this era in the 80s, okay? And I was part of this whole satanic panic shit, you know. But even back then, even when I was drinking the Kool-Aid, I thought to myself, who listens to music backwards just to find hidden messages? Who does that? A very sick and twisted brain, if you ask me. But I digress. Moving on. Um, all right. Um, going through here, seeing if there's anything else I want to. If you want more on the Satanic Panic, I do have a series on that, by the way. Okay, so here is the skepticism section. I'm just going to read a portion of it because I'm a skeptic. And I don't need to be told there are skeptics. Michael Shermer says the emergence of the Paul is dead phenomena, including the alleged message at the end of I'm So Tired, was caused by faulty perception of a pattern, otherwise known as pareidolia. Shermer argues that the human brain evolved with strong pattern recognition ability that was necessary to process large amounts of noise in man's environment, but that ability today leads to false positives. Okay. Excuse me. All right. And now, hey, Limited. All right. So, now we'll see what the Satanic Panic in its height had to say about backmasking. Oh, excuse me. So sorry. Make sure you can see that. Okay. And you can. And I will mute myself so we don't have an echo. And here we go.
Have already been conditioned to become part of this Antichrist or anti-Jesus Christ system. Now, Satan is using the rock groups as his patsies to evangelize the youth of the world.
Welcome to Deviate with Rolf Potts, where I talk with experts, public figures, and interesting people about fascinating topics that meander off topic. Today, I explore another musical myth. Pastor asked audience members to come to the front of the church to confess their rock and roll sins. I was one of the first to go forward. Now, I didn't know it at the time because I wasn't evangelical, but this is what is known as an altar call. And really, the altar call was not aimed at 10-year-olds like me. It was aimed at the 16-year-old heavy metal dudes with their feathery mustaches and Black Sabbath t-shirts who sat slumped in the back row. As it happened, the only album I owned at the time was The Village People's Cruisin', which the pastor said was pushing, quote, the homosexual agenda. To be honest, I had asked for that album for Christmas 3 years earlier, not because I was exploring alternatives.
Pushing the homosexual agenda. Does that sound like anything you hear today? Why are we still talking about this? Why are we still talking about this? At any rate, I'm glad I found this channel. He's doing what I'm doing, except I'm commenting on his thing because I can't find half the stuff that he found, probably because it's not on the internet anymore, or I just don't know where to find it. That could be too, because I'm not very, I don't know, like, where to find this stuff. Usually, other people have a better time finding this stuff than I do. Excuse me. All right, moving on. I don't know, Limited. I don't know. You know, you would think that, I don't know, I probably already ruined my monetization. That's okay. But you would think that Christians wouldn't have a problem with homosexuals, right? They're taking themselves out of the breeding pool. Makes more breeding partners for the Christians, right? Whatever.
Sexuality, but because, like every other 7-year-old in America, I had really liked the song YMCA, which all the kids liked to spell out with their arms when it came on at the skating rink. Notwithstanding this fact, Jared's father bought a copy of the pastor's book, which was called Backward Masking Unmasked, and Jared, being the concerned Christian friend he was, made a photocopy for me. Now, all these years later, when I talk about the books that captured my imagination when I was young, I usually recall books like The Boxcar Children or The Fellowship of the Ring, or a little later, Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions. But if I was to really be honest about this, I would also mention Backward Masking Unmasked. At first, because it gave me visions of demons lurking in LP records. But later, and I'm talking a couple years later, like when I was 12 or so, a little less credulous, I used the book as a source of hard facts about cool bands like AC/DC and Pink Floyd at a time when I didn't have the disposable income to buy Hit Parader or Rolling Stone magazine. In short,
Okay, so, like I said, I remember this, and I remember sitting in church and being told, not, you know, not attending one of these bonfires and actually seeing this for myself, right? But being told that, you know, that they were burning records, okay? I'm not gonna candy coat it. They were burning records. They were burning books, okay? Not a good thing to do, but anyway, burning records and burning books. Okay, so I was told, and this was in front of the whole damn church, okay, that in these bonfires where these quote unquote satanic books and records were being burned, that they heard demonic screaming coming out of the fire. How did they know it was demonic screaming? And how do they know that it was coming out of the fire? At any rate, ugh. And now we're getting back into it. Maybe not as bad. It's not as widespread as it was. The police sure aren't taking any of this seriously. Thank goodness. We got idiots in power. I'm not going to say who. They are. Moving on.
Backward Masking Unmasked was meant to turn me away from rock and roll, but in the end, it only made the music seem more mysterious and compelling. Now, the twist here is that as the 1980s progressed and I became more and more skeptical of the idea that Satan was influencing rock and roll, American culture at large, including congresspeople and law enforcement officials, began to treat Satanism as an actual social problem. So in this episode of Deviate, roll up my sleeves and dig into the wonders and idiosyncrasies of 1980s satanic panic with little help from my go-to rock music gurus, Jed Bodwin and Michael Carmody. You might remember them from episode 12, which covered the forgotten corporate rock albums of the 1980s. This time around, I bought Jed and Michael used copies of Backward Masking Unmasked on eBay, and together we sat down at KMUW Studios and book. It actually has an introduction by Louisiana State Senator Bill Keith, who's sort of
I don't know, Limited. You can Google it, I guess, if you really want to know.
sort of endorsed this, but this is what he says. What's wrong with rock and roll? Plenty. It affects tens of millions of young people and adults in America and around the world. Rock music is laced with lyrics exalting drugs, immorality, homosexuality, violence, and rebellion. As if this wouldn't be enough, there is now a more sinister danger. It's called backward masking. Backward masking is a phrase created to describe the technique that rock groups are using to convey satanic and drug-related messages to the subconscious. This technique is used by someone saying something forward, which intentionally means something else played backward. Another way this can be used is by taking one of many tracks that are used in recording an album and playing one secret message mixed into the album.
Actually, backmasking and backward masking are two different things. So they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. Come on. If they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about, how can we take them seriously? Moving on.
Album at a very low level backwards. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. He's quoting the scientists. So he's quoting sort of the pseudoscientists.
Where was the scientist from too? It's like the Topeka Institute.
Right, no, it's William H. Yarrell II, president of Applied Potentials Institute.
Right.
And so it's like the sort of, it's like something that somebody would make up for a horror movie.
It's like stairs above an expired JCPenney store. That's where the office is.
Right. So he wasn't going to Michigan psychology department. So he quotes Mr. Yale saying, actually, if somebody said to you Satan is God, you would immediately reject it because your check valve, the reticular activating system, would reject it. But if you heard Dog see Nazas a number of times, which is Satan is God.
Reticular activating system. Reticular activating system. I have no clue what that is. And I have my Bachelor of Science in Psychology. Now, it is possible that reticular activating system is a just a term for something I know as something different. So look it up right quick. Because sometimes there is okay. It's basically the reticular formation. that's what it is. It's part of it, but it's basically the reticular formation. Which is part of the brainstem, otherwise known as our reptilian brain. Okay? So, it is a thing, but actually it's not activating, it's activation, which is probably why I did not recognize it. There's a difference between reticular activating system and reticular activation system. So, anyway. Moving on.
Backwards, it would be, quote, decoded by the right part or the creative part of your brain and stored as a fact, exclamation point. Basically, he sets up this book by saying that there's satanic messages embedded in rock and roll. What did you guys think of this book? And then how did you guys take it? We're all roughly the same. How did you take it back in the day?
It took me way back. I'm sure Jed has stories of his largely scared of the devil upbringing, right?
Well, I mean, the weird thing is I had, so I was raised Catholic, and I had two brothers who actually attended seminary for a period of time, but we weren't a particularly devout family. My mom had converted; she had been raised Lutheran, and so she didn't have a real strong Catholic faith. It was mostly because my dad was Catholic, and that allowed them to get married in the church. And he wasn't. French Catholics are not particularly. There's not a lot to get excited about if you're French Catholic. so that wasn't part of our. My parents, my older brother was 16 years older, so he lived through the 60s and all that stuff. So my parents were.
Well, that and the fact that I don't think the Catholic, I think it was more of a Protestant thing. All right, moving on.
Really pretty permissive in terms of that. I had cousins, however, who were evangelical Catholic types, because by the late 70s, early 80s, there's this evangelical movement that's sort of creeping in. I think they called it the charismatic movement that's creeping into the Catholic Church. And so
after Roe versus Wade, I think it ripples through a lot of churches.
Exactly. So my cousin David was telling me about how Gene Simmons of Kiss had once been a woman, how he had a
Gene Simmons has never been
Knights in Satan's Service, or according to our author here, Kids in Satan's Service. I think Knights in Satan's Service is a little more formidable.
Yeah, they're not kids, they're grown men.
Yeah, they're grown men.
Where the fuck do these people get this shit? I'm not talking, these people are cool. They're talking about the Nutter Butters, right? But where do the Nutter Butters get this shit? That's what I want to know.
On and on. And so that was always a little wacky to me, because it was like, this doesn't, I mean, even as a 8, 9-year-old, I was like, really, a cow's tongue grafted? How is that surgery? How does that go down? So in my home, that stuff all did seem sort of whack, but there were kids around me who were being introduced to this, and I was starting to have these conversations like, really?
I think there's an urban myth aspect to all of this too. This was in the pre-fact verification age, but this book in particular came out right when MTV was blowing up too.
Yeah.
And so
I think we're in the post-fact verification age right now. Am I right? Never mind. Look, I am really, really put out with the political situation right now in America. But I'm not a political channel. I try my hardest not to, you know, say anything about it. But sometimes I just gotta.
So it feels very transitional
Yeah.
in terms of how people were discovering music. And by the time this book was bubbling up, or by the time this book came out, it was a time you could just turn on the TV, see what bands looked like, see how they had decided to present themselves. But before that, there was a mysteriousness, a mystique.
It's true.
Yeah.
And if you're 8, 9, 10 years old, man, that it's exciting actually to hear to just sort of think about a bovine tongue being grafted onto a guy. I remember at that age, people said Kiss has never been seen without their makeup on.
Right.
That they are this secretive group. And I think this is mentioned in the book that there was a comic book that was printed
In their blood.
in their blood.
Actually, on this day in 77 was the day they delivered the vial of blood. I was doing my music history thing this morning, and that was one of today's facts. So that was 41 years ago today. They literally delivered vials of their blood to the comic book plant in upstate New York to go into the red ink in the Kiss comic book.
Amazing. And I had kids at elementary school would trade Kiss cards, and much like Star Wars cards or baseball cards. And this was in the late 70s. So that was before, and we'll get into sort of the historical and pop cultural factors that fed this book and what came after. But yeah, so Kiss was definitely
bovine tongue onto a human. This has nothing to do with nothing, but I thought it was interesting. There was a baby that needed a heart, and there was not a human baby heart available. But they thought maybe if they could keep her alive long enough that there might be a human donor pretty soon. So what they did was they took a baboon heart and transplanted it into the human baby. Now, it didn't last very long. I forget how long it lasted. But it didn't last very long. And to tell you the truth, it wasn't meant to last very long. It was probably meant to last longer than it did. But, you know, if they didn't do anything, she was going to die anyway. Anyway, that has nothing to do with nothing. I just thought it was kind of cool. So just a minute, Limited. Rolf Potts. ROLF POTTS. Rolf Potts. But yeah, so now you know the kind of ridiculous shit that I had to go through when I was a kid. Because I was an evangelical when I was a kid. What are you gonna do? So anyway, well, I think that'll do it for now. Like I said, I've got a sore throat, so not really up to talking. Thanks for coming. Don't forget to hit the like button. If you are financially able, please become a member of this channel. You can become a member for as low as 99 cents a month. You get custom emojis and early access to debunks. If you are not financially able or secure, do not even think about it. I will talk to you later and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.